Good morning. We're ready to get started on this January 20th, 2017. Oh, okay. Let me start all over. We are ready to get started on this January 20th of 2017. Such a great time to be reading the one-year Bible, this one-year Bible that's broken down into Old Testament, New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs. Just love this, how it just applies to our life right now, today. Good morning, Cassie. Good to see you. Hi, Cameron. Glad to have you on. And then, you know, maybe it's just where I'm at in my life right now. Maybe it's just that there's a lot going on. When is there not a lot going on, right? But anyway, it just seems like every day when I read, I've got so many thoughts going on. You know, it's my own thoughts mostly. I believe that. I know God's speaking in the middle of my thoughts, but it's all applicable. I believe it's all applicable. I don't believe I'm getting any other voices as I'm reading, but because a lot of my thoughts are involved in all of this, it's hard for me to sift through what do I want to say in a very short period of time this morning. There's just so much in here. Genesis, we're reading in chapters 41 and 42. It's about the life of Joseph. If you have not studied about the life of Joseph, you need to. It is such a powerful story, a powerful story. It again will back up what God's been speaking to me all year, for the last 20 days. We're on the 20th day of January. I don't have to be perfect. Joseph was not perfect. And we see that in today's reading. So Joseph was born to the woman that his father loved. Back in a time when there was arranged marriages, back in the time when there was multiple marriages, because they were still very much multiplying and filling the earth. Joseph was born to the woman who his dad really loved. He loved her. And then when she gave birth to Joseph's little brother, Benjamin, she died in childbirth. And it caused Joseph and Benjamin to be even nearer and dearer to their father's heart. Now, I'll never condone showing favorites with our children. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just explaining facts. And so Joseph was guilty of being his father's favorite. Was it Joseph's fault? No. He was born into that situation. And it caused his brothers to hate him. And his brothers, his own flesh and blood, sold him into slavery as an alternative to killing him. And so once again, what Joseph was guilty of was just simply being the favorite. And he gets sold into slavery. But early on in his life, God spoke to him, and he spoke to him in a dream. And way more important, I think, than in that dream of God telling him his brothers and his family would bow down to him, I think what God spoke to him that stuck with him so profoundly is he told him that he was with him, that Joseph was chosen by God for the role that he laid out in the vision and in the dream to give him. And that stuck with Joseph, that he knew God had a plan for his life. He knew. When you know that God has a plan for your life, nothing can shake you. You can't be shaken when you know God has a plan for your life. And so here we are. They sold him into slavery. He gets put into slavery. He's having to serve as a slave. And he finds favor, as we read yesterday, still so powerful for me. I went back this morning and did a little bit more study on yesterday and went back to the words that was written yesterday that the Lord was with Joseph, so he became successful in all he did. Because God was with Joseph, he was successful. Not because Joseph was the best at everything he did. He was the best at everything he did because God empowered him to be the best. Not of his own rights, not of his own skills, but because God was with him. The Lord was with Joseph, so he was successful in everything. And so as he's serving in Potiphar's house, Potiphar's wife comes on to him and he rejects her because God's with him. He tells her, this would be a sin against anybody, but most importantly, it's a sin against man, and I won't do this. And she lies and then tells her husband that he attempted to rape her, and he puts him in jail. He's not guilty. In fact, he did the honorable thing. It's almost like he was being punished for doing the honorable thing. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt because you stood for right that you got punished? That's Joseph. That's where he was. And so while he's in prison, once again, so the Lord was with Joseph. So all he did succeeded, and he was successful in prison, and he got honored, and he got promoted, and he got raised up. And then because he interpreted some dreams, he then gets to interpret the dream for Pharaoh. Pharaoh brings him out, makes him second in command to everything. Pharaoh commanded that nothing in the land would be done without Joseph's permission. And then the dream was about famine, feast and famine, 7 years of feast, meaning that there would be plenty in the land. And Joseph was put in charge of all of that. And so he stored up food because of the dream that predicted 7 years of famine following the feast. And now the whole land, including Egypt, is in a famine, and people are starving to death. And his family hears that Egypt has food. And so Jacob, Joseph's dad, sends the 10 brothers to Egypt to go get food. And so they come in to the store, the storekeeper, which is Joseph, to get food. And I just got caught up in the emotion of what I think Joseph was feeling. The Bible's not just real clear about the emotions. It doesn't say that. It doesn't exactly explain the emotions. And maybe it's my heart and the way I connect with people, but I can't even imagine how he must have felt. So your brothers who hated you so much that the first thing they did is they ripped the coat of many colors your dad had given you off of you. Who knows what they were saying? It wasn't nice what they were saying, because that coat of many colors that Jacob had given Joseph represented his favoritism towards Joseph against his brothers. So the first thing they did is they ripped that coat off of him. And then in his presence, they are speaking about how they're going to kill him. Joseph knows very well the hatred is so strong that they want to kill him. And so they throw him into a cistern while they're trying to decide how to kill him. And then while he's in the cistern, one of the brothers comes to Joseph's, comes to his aid and says, well, let's not kill him. Let's just leave him here to die. So he knows he's in that cistern to die. And they go off and they leave him and they abandon him. I mean, out in the middle of nowhere. There is no community, there's no water, there's no bathroom, there's no pillow for him to sleep on at night. And I'm not clear about how long he stayed in the cistern. And then they hear the Egyptians coming by and they decide to sell him into slavery. And Joseph has heard all of this. I mean, you want to talk about rejection. Do you know how many of us respond wrongly in relationships because at some point in our life we had suffered rejection somewhere along the line? Rejection causes us to reject people. When we feel rejected on the inside, we reject others. And if they're not really rejecting us, we'll project our own rejection on them, so that it looks like they're rejecting us. I mean, it's deep. It's deep. If you have a pattern of conflict in relationships, use Psalms 139, verse 23 and 24. Search my heart, O Lord, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me on the path of righteousness. And be careful what you ask for. And why do I know I can say this to you? It's because that's what I have to do. And it's what I've had to do. It's so much better in me now than it used to be, but that spirit of rejection gets on you, and it'll wreck relationships. It is the primary spirit, I believe, that divides marriages in America today. The 52% divorce rate is probably 50% attributed to a spirit of rejection inside of one or both parties of that marriage. Talk about rejection. Joseph suffered rejection from the people who were supposed to love him, the people who were supposed to have his back. For crying out loud, the only reason he went to his brothers is because his dad sent him to go look out for him and make sure they were all right. And then they turn and attack him. And so back to how he's feeling in today's reading. Here they come. Here comes the 10 of them. They come in. He's a man of honor, and he's a man, in position, and he's a man with all the food that's going to save their lives. And they bow down to him, and he immediately he recognizes them. What was Joseph feeling in those moments when he looked and said, that's my brothers. That's blood of my blood, bone of my bone. That's my brothers. Those are my father's sons. Those are the men who hurt me. Those are the men who rejected me. Those are the men who meant evil for me. And I believe today, in the way the scriptures ended today, we got just a little glimpse of some of the fleshly emotions Joseph felt towards his brothers, because he accused them of being spies. I think we got to see a little bit of selfishness. That one more time, I'm telling you, Joseph, do you know how many books have been written about Joseph? I mean, how many scriptures are devoted to him, and how many times is he referenced in God's word? Joseph is a mighty man of God, a mighty man of God. And yet, I believe one more time for Elizabeth who struggles at times, Elizabeth who spent too much of her adulthood trying to be a perfectionist, or living with a spirit of perfectionism on me because of rejection, who wanted to be perfect and fell short all the time, is reading about Joseph, one of the most famous characters in the Bible, and understand that he actually had some emotions towards his brothers, that he accused them of being a spy. And then he manipulates them. He manipulates them because what do you think's underlying here about him sending them after his little brother, Benjamin? He wanted to see his brother. Instead of just coming out, he could have ordered it. I mean, there was nobody above him except for Pharaoh. He could have ordered, go out and bring my brother Benjamin to me, but he didn't. He manipulated it to make his brothers go get Benjamin and bring him back. And that's where it ends today. And it just so comforting to me today to know I see some human emotion inside of Joseph. The mighty man of the Bible, Joseph, struggled when he first saw his brothers. And of course, I've read this many, many times, and I can't separate the story, because I know that tomorrow we're going to read where he cries. I mean, it brings him to tears. He loves them so much. All the while he's mad at him. All the while he's processing these emotions inside of him. But today, it gave me comfort in knowing, there's only one perfect man that ever walked the face of the earth, and it's Jesus Christ. None of us are perfect, and it's okay for me not to be perfect. and to see the way we stir things up in relationships because of a spirit of rejection. Why did Joseph's brothers do to him what they did to him? Because they felt rejected. They were rejected by Jacob because he favored Joseph over. Do you get it? Do you see the pattern? Rejected people reject people. Hurting people hurt people. His brothers were hurting. His brothers were wounded. His brothers walked in a spirit of offense. That's why we cannot walk in offense. We cannot. We have to keep praying. Search my heart, O Lord. Find if there be any wicked way in me and get it out of me so you can lead me on the path of righteousness. We have to get rage out of us. We have to get rejection out of us. We have to get offense out of us. And stop blaming it on everybody else. Well, I have a right to be offended. Do you see? Well, if anybody in the whole world had a right to be offended, it would be Joseph. And while we may see little tidbits of that offense coming out in today's reading, wait till you see how Joseph ends up with his brothers. It's beyond, it's grown me every single time I read it. How do I treat those who really do reject me? How do I treat those who come against me? How do I treat those who wrong me? Well, we have very clear commandments in this word that we're to love them. And in the end, Joseph loved his brothers. In fact, I'm going to tell you that whatever emotions we might have got a glimpse of today, it still was rooted in the love that he had for his brothers. Their rejection wouldn't have mattered nearly as much if he hadn't loved them. Joseph loved his brothers before they offended him, before they beat him, before they put him in the cistern, before they sold him into slavery, and he loved them after they did. There's so many lessons in there. I could preach a month of sermons on it. There's so many lessons in there, at least for me. It speaks to my heart deeply. Then we move on into Matthew. And Jesus is speaking in the parables. Now, yesterday, so powerful. We're told that we get to understand the mysteries of God. And he spoke in parables because those that was not of him would hear the parables and not understand. Say, what in the world is he talking about? In fact, we see the disciples coming to him even. Even the disciples had to come and say, will you explain that to me? He spoke in parables. He spoke in mysteries. And yesterday's reading, we have the promises that when we're his, we understand the mysteries of God. And so he's telling the parable, and this just goes right along with this whole family dynamic of the brothers that belonged to Jacob, Joseph and his brothers, and all of the conflict that goes on in our families. Family comes against family, brother against brother, sister against sister. Wives come against mother-in-laws. Mother-in-laws come against the wives of their sons, and vice versa. Turn it around. Gender means nothing here. You see what I'm saying? And then we're reading about the weeds. Ooh, about the weeds. Jesus put another parable before him in Matthew 13, starting in verse 24. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. Now he's saying, the kingdom of heaven. Remember, Jesus is the one that taught us to pray. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. On earth as it is in heaven. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. That's exactly what those brothers were doing. Every time they got a chance when they tried to turn Jacob against Joseph, because it started long before they got into that field. Their jealousy had grown to the point that they wanted to kill him. So what about when the seeds of jealousy were first planted and they went to Jacob and they said, you know what Joseph did today? Well, you know what Joseph did? They did that. They were pot stirrers. They stirred the pot of strife, trying to get Jacob to reject Joseph and accept them. So they sowed weeds among the wheat, and then they went away. The seeds of strife has been planted. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? And then he said to them, an enemy has done this. You know, who sows seeds of strife? Who looks at what somebody else is doing and creates strife out of what they're doing, and they may or may not be guilty of it? Who's the pot stirrer? Who really stirs the pot? And he said to them, an enemy has done this. So the servant said to him, then do you want us to go and gather them? And then listen to this. Listen to this. So we have a newlywed, and we have a husband who's very, very close to his mama. The Bible says that he shall leave his mother and father and cling to his wife. And he's making that transition from being in the family home, dependent on his mom for advice, dependent on his dad, and then all of a sudden now he's responsible for a wife. He has a family, and he's doing the best he knows how to do to make that transition and leave the mother and the father and cling to the wife. And things are said, and the wife is offended by the mother is defended by the daughter-in-law, and the next thing you know, here's the son being torn in two between two people that he loves very, very, very much. Jacob, I know, had to feel that way. Jacob loved Joseph, but he also loved his other 10. He loved the other 10 enough that he sent Joseph out to go check on them in case there might be problems. He loved them. How did it feel to have 10 of his kids squabbling one way against another of his children and that he loved, and being stuck smack dab in the middle? And then the next thing you know, the wife is saying, it's either your mom or it's me. And or the mother is saying, how could you pick this woman? And I'm just using the genders. It can be male and female. It can be a mother, a daughter leaving the mother and father and coming in under the authority of a new husband, and the husband and the father-in-law aren't getting along. Same thing. Don't get caught up in the details. Listen to the spirit of the message today. Listen to the spirit of the message, because this is what I'm going to tell you. None of us are innocent of this. None. Most of all, me. I have seen it go to the point where they demand that they choose between themselves and the mother or the father, that they have to make a choice. And the Bible's clear what that choice has to be. The Bible is clear. But here's the deal. Listen to this story again. So I want to read it again. Listen to this. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? He said to them, an enemy has done this. So the servant said to him, then do you want us to go and gather them? But he said, no, lest in gathering the weeds, you root up the wheat along with them. What right do we have to ask our loved ones to choose between us and somebody else that they love? Even if that other person is the weed. What if we're the weed? I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. What if I'm the weed? I'm the weed. Search my heart, O Lord, and see if there be any wicked way in me. But even if the all clear comes, no, Elizabeth, just be still, because that's what he'll tell you. Be still. I'll take care of the weeds. Because what happens? No, lest gathering the weeds, you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time, I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barns. We all have to have healthy boundaries. We do. And we all have to know that line, not to cross over and to not let anybody else cross over. But so often we step into that role of us being the pot stirrer the whole time we're pointing at them saying it's them. It's those weeds. It's those weeds over there. So let's get rid of the weeds, and we just demand that they be gone. And when we do that, and if it happens, the roots of the wheat is damaged in the process. Where if we will turn to our Father first, and foremost to our Father, and let Him guide us, He will always say to you, I'll take care of any enemy you have. I'll take care of this situation. And you know what the kicker is in this story? The kicker is the weeds had to be dealt with. But by Him, not by us. Not by force, not a moment too soon, and not a moment too late, lest the harvest be damaged. And the harvest includes way more people than just me. Powerful stuff. Hard to know what to just pick out in today's reading because there's just so much good. So much good. Oh, wow. Anyway, it just goes on and on and on in our reading today. I'll finish up with the Proverbs 4, and we're reading 6 verses today. Proverbs 4, 1 through 6. Kind of goes along with what we're talking about. Hear, O sons, a father's instruction. Who's our father? And be attentive that you may gain insight. He gave us a lot of insight today if our hearts are tender to hear it. If our hearts are hardened, it's just exactly what He's been telling us about the parables. Jesus spoke in parables because those with a hard heart would not be able to understand and wasn't intended to understand. His words are intended for those who are His, who can hear instruction without being offended, who can hear and gain insight, as the Bible says, for I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. We're tempted today to just say, no, that's not about me. I was tempted today I could name, I am not kidding, I could name 10 other people I could look at in today's reading. But I am telling you guys, today's reading, one more time, was for Elizabeth Inman on January the 20th of 2017. For I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. When I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me. Now, do you see how this all come together for me? We just talked about a tender son still being at home with his mother and father. Let your heart hold fast my words. Keep my commandments and live. And live. To not live is to die. And to not keep these words close to us is to allow death to creep in. And I'm not talking about a physical death, though it will lead to that. It's a spiritual death that takes place in us when we don't allow God to instruct us and to teach us His precepts. Get wisdom. We got given a lot of wisdom today. Get wisdom. Get insight. Insight into what does the spirit of rejection do to us? How do I, Elizabeth, respond with a spirit of rejection riding my back? Because I was rejected as a little girl. Because I had that teacher say that to me. Because my mother was wrong one time and said the wrong words to me because my dad chose to work instead of, I mean, it goes on the list. How about this? How about this? That we're born into a sinful nature, born into the sinful nature created by our fathers, that we're born rejected until we choose to accept Jesus Christ and all He's done to us. I want to talk about a spirit of rejection. Wow. Let your heart hold fast my words, keep my commandments, and live. Get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget, and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, speaking of wisdom, and she will keep you. Love her, and she will guard you. And when we're being offended, we're not allowing wisdom to guide us. When we are walking in a spirit of offense, we are not allowing God to do what He's wanting to do inside of us. We've got our walls up, and those walls, first and foremost, keep out keep out God's instruction. It keeps out the spirit of wisdom that he has given to us to help us and so that we can live. So anyway, once again, just being transparent. These are all things I have suffered from. I don't suffer from them nearly as much today. There was a time in my early adult life that I wore my feelings on my shirt sleeve, and the slightest little offense, I would walk in a spirit of offense for days. Go to church and you don't speak to me, and I would think on that for days. What did I do? What did I say? Well, what? Well, can you? I mean, it would just go on and on. Slightest little things. Use the wrong tone of voice with me. And it wasn't, it had nothing to do with who didn't speak to me. It had nothing to do with who used the wrong tone of voice to me. It had everything to do with the spirit of offense in me, the spirit of rejection in me, that any number of days could do the slightest little thing and I got offended. It was an issue with me. It had nothing to do with them. And yet we're always pointing our finger. If only they would change, if only they would soften their hearts, if only, you know what, if she would just completely get them out of their lives, then our relationship would be fine. If he would just choose me first, it goes on, and it gets bigger and bigger and messier and messier and messier, and divorces happen and estrangements happen and bad stuff happens. But when you choose to allow God to work inside of you, then you can truly be rejected in a powerful way. You can have horrible words spoken at you, and you can rest knowing, number one, those words aren't truth. Number two, those words don't line up with this word. When I had somebody come against me last year, and it happened last year, these are the truths that I had to hold to. Those words are not truth. Those words are not even the right words that is inside that person. Those words do not align with this. I know the good plan God has for us. His plan will win, and peace will reign on the inside of me. And I had to choose, first of all, not to be offended. Second of all, I had to choose not to live in rejection, even though a real live rejection was happening. I did not live rejected, and I lived grateful. I was grateful for every kind word I'd ever heard from that person in the many, many, many years prior. I thanked God on a regular basis for all of the kindness, for the many times I got to hear good words, words of love, words of reconciliation, words of, I'm so much better than I used to be. I got a long ways to go. I still had days I cried. I still had one morning I woke up 3 o'clock in the morning. It took me an hour and a half to go back to sleep. Just being honest with you. These are all things everybody on the face of the earth has to deal with, and it's why he gave us the BIBLE, basic instructions before leaving earth. He will deliver you. He will restore you. He will get that spirit of rejection off your back. He will, if you submit to him. I had to make it all about him. I have no rights as his daughter. I gave up all rights to be the daughter of the King. I gave up all rights. I'm his. Do with me as you will. Do with me as, send me where you want to send me. Put in front of me whoever you want to be in front of me, Lord, and I will follow you. I will follow you if it costs me my life. I will follow you if it costs me my family. I will follow you if it costs me my job. I will follow you if it costs me my community. I will follow you at all cost. And the best part about this, guys, is that as I'm walking this out step by step, day by day, in submission to my Heavenly Father, he restores all. All things good are restored, and he gives us the desires of our heart. And what the locust has eaten, he gives back to us 100-fold. Oh, wow. Wow. Thanks for loving me. thanks for letting me be transparent. I put something on Facebook this morning with the right intent, the right spirit. I'd prayed. I knew it was from God. And I put the words hate cripples on Facebook, and immediately had some people that loved me come back and said, that sounds as though you hate cripples. And so I finished the sentence that said, hate cripples me, not you. When we choose to walk in hate, we choose to poison ourselves, not them. When we choose to walk in anger, it poisons me, not them. It's not about them. It never has been. It never will be. And it's really not even about me. I don't have the right to hate. Jesus Christ took that on the cross and was crucified so that I don't have to walk in hate. Was crucified so that I don't have to live with rage inside of me. I don't have the right to have rage inside of me, not at the cost and the price paid by Jesus Christ. So, but some folks loved me enough to point it out to me how it sounded, and I corrected it within minutes. So, because there's one thing I want to do as I end my time on this earth, I want to be full of love, and I want to give each and every one of you love. And as I hear the sound of my voice, I pray with everything in me that you hear the sound of love, because if you are hearing the sound of love in my voice, then you're hearing our Father.